Good morning and welcome to In Depth. I'm your host Ron. Today we have a lot of stuff to go over. We're going to start off by recapping the Kansas State and Arizona game, but once we get done with that, we have about 15 college games to go over for this Saturday. We're going to go over predictions, briefly talk about some of the teams, but we're just going to go ahead and hop straight into the Kansas State and Arizona recap. So straight into the Kansas State and Arizona recap. Kansas State did end up taking this game 31-7. Arizona, they did have a lot of penalties. They had 4 penalties on one drive alone. 2 of them were back-to-back holding calls that led to 1st and 30. They weren't able to pick it up. They did make it 3rd and manageable with about 3rd and 11. However, it wasn't enough to get a first down. Penalties were a big problem for Arizona this game. They had a few chances to get some points on the board, but penalties kind of took them out of scoring chance. Time of possession, though, Arizona did end up holding the ball for about a minute longer. They had 30 minutes and 41 seconds of total time of possession. Kansas State only had 29 minutes and 19 seconds. So they had about a minute and 20 seconds, minute and 22 seconds more. Weren't able to do anything with it, though. Their one touchdown didn't really do anything against Kansas State. Like I said, they did get to Kansas State's side of the field multiple times. They just weren't able to capitalize. Kansas State, total yards 393. Some of those did come from punt return yards. They didn't have as many passing yards as I was thinking, but Avery Johnson still had a decent game. We're going to go over his performance here in just a minute. Total yards for Arizona was 324. Most of that did come from passing. They didn't really do too much on the ground. I know yesterday we said that Conley was the better running back. Today, Giddens did look a little bit better. We're going to compare their performances here in just a minute. Overall, though, I think that Kansas State, with their win today, they definitely have a chance of moving up in the rankings. A 31-7 win against a ranked opponent, especially somebody who's ranked 20th. So it's not like they're just somebody who's number 24, 25. It's not like they beat like Louisville or Northern Illinois. As much as Arizona didn't do anything this game, they are still a decent program, so it was definitely a nice win for Kansas State. Like I said, hopefully that'll end up bumping them up in the rankings a little bit, or bumping them down in the rankings in this case. Now taking a look at player performances, we're first going to look at Quali Conley, the running back yesterday that I said was better than Giddens, but based off today, that statement could not be less true. Conley finished the day with 14 attempts. He only averaged 3.4 yards a carry, coming to 48 total yards. He had 1 rushing touchdown, the only touchdown that Arizona put up all day, which was very surprising, especially with how many yards McMillan had. We'll go over his performance in a minute. He did have 1 reception for 2 receiving yards. The better running back on the day, though, definitely was Giddens, who had 17 carries for 86 yards. He averaged about 5.2 yards a carry. He as well had a rushing touchdown, so both running backs in this game did end up scoring. Avery Johnson called it before the game. He's the better quarterback. Noah did throw for more yards. Avery only ended up finishing with 156, but he did have 2 touchdowns, went 14 of 23, 17 rushing attempts though as well for 110 rushing yards. So very versatile, dual threat. Granted, he didn't have as many passing yards, but with his passing and rushing yards combined, he was pretty much sitting there like 2 yards short of Noah's passing yards. I do want to go over Jace Brown just fairly quickly. He had 3 receptions for 60 yards, averaged about 20 yards per catch. I do want to mention the backup running back for Kansas State. While Giddens did get majority of the carries, Edwards did come out with 6 rushing attempts for 41 yards. That's not terrible, especially as a backup running back. He broke 40 yards off 6 attempts. It's pretty good average in my opinion. Where he had most electric was 71-yard return for a touchdown on punt. It was 7-7. This is kind of what opened it up for Kansas State. From that point, they had momentum going forward. Wasn't really stopping them. Granted, they did only score 3 more touchdowns after that. It's still a decent amount, but that wasn't about the first quarter, so Definitely not as much offense as I thought we were going to see. Kansas State definitely did do their thing, scored about as many points as I thought they were going to total. That's why we had the over at 60.5 yesterday. Didn't hit that, definitely was over, only would have got you about like 38, so we weren't even close to hitting that over 60.5. But Keenan Garber, I do want to mention him for Kansas State as well quickly, just because he did have the only interception on the night for both teams. He had 3 solo tackles, 24 interception return yards, so wasn't able to take it to the house, but he definitely did have a lot of nice plays. Like I said, 3 of those tackles were solo tackles, so it's not like he was coming in and cleaning up for anybody. They were decent, open, in open field tackles, so it's not like he was, like I said, coming in, cleaning up somebody else's mess or just kind of containing somebody, and that was the case. Like I said, he was making some nice plays last night. It was definitely very hard for Noah to pass on that Kansas defense, or at least efficiently and get it into the end zone. Like we talked about yesterday, he went 26 of 42 on the game, 268 passing yards. He did not have a passing touchdown, which was very surprising to me. Even if it would have been just 1 touchdown to McMillan, I was assuming that he would at least put it in the end zone once. Didn't happen. Very disappointed with his performance. He did break 250 passing yards, having no touchdown, and then he rushed for 3 attempts for 5 yards. So definitely not as good of a performance as Avery. Avery threw for 2 more touchdowns, 1 less interception, about 100 plus more rushing yards. He did have a little bit less attempts, about 20. Granted, still though, only 100 yards less passing, so if he had 20 more attempts, I would assume that he would have over 100 yards passing, but that's just statistically how the game played out. Back to Noah's performance, like I said, out of his 268 passing yards, 138 of those came from McMillan. It came off 11 receptions, averaging about 12.6 yards at 12.5 per catch. So as we stated yesterday, it's not that Noah's a terrible quarterback. It's just that majority of his yards are going to be going to McMillan. So it's not so much him getting the ball to multiple people, reading the field. It's more of just him getting the ball to McMillan. McMillan gets yards. That means Noah gets yards. Therefore, it looks like Noah has a ton of passing yards. But like I said, realistically, over half of his passing yards came from McMillan. So take McMillan out of that equation. I don't know how good Noah really is, but Kansas State definitely had a dominant performance yesterday. Like I said, they did end up taking that 31-7. That'll more than likely raise them in the rankings, especially with a few teams having bye weeks this week. Maybe some upsets. Like I said, we're going to hop straight into the predictions for Saturday. We'll take a look at all the top 25 teams that are playing this week. We're going to go over our predictions for the games and just briefly go over some of the players in the games. We're going to hop straight into Saturday predictions, but before we do, let's go over some of the teams in the top 25 who will not be playing this week. First, we have Ohio State sitting at number 3 in the power rankings. We got Penn State at number 8. 3 spots down, we have number 11 USC. We're going to take a little bit of a jump to number 19 Louisville. We got number 21 Iowa State. They had a dominant, not really dominant, but they had a good win over Iowa a week or so ago. That was a nice game. Number 22 Clemson. And then lastly, Northern Illinois does bump up into the top 25 with their win. So they will sit at number 25. They do not play this week. So I was low-key a little bit excited to see a game from them, but we'll have to wait until next weekend. So hopping straight into the matchups and predictions. First game of the day is going to be number 24 Boston College at number 6 Missouri. Personally, I have Missouri taking this game. Their defense is looking solid. Granted, I don't think that they're going to shut out Boston College just like they did the last 2 teams, but I definitely think that Mizzou's offense is starting to get it together a little bit. A lot of people were concerned with Cody Schrader leaving, what they were going to do, so I do have Mizzou winning that game. I think that if they win against Boston College, I think that there's a decent chance that they move up in the power rankings. Maybe not a lot, but I definitely think that they would break the top 5. Our next game is Alabama at Wisconsin. Jalen Milroe, number 4 Alabama, not looking as great as they have. Kalen DeBoer is his first 2 games, so we're not going to judge it too much, but at least based off what I've seen, Alabama definitely isn't looking as scary as they have before. I do have them winning this game against Wisconsin. I know it is in Wisconsin. Alabama, yes, like I said, been looking a little bit shaky, but I do think that Alabama will take that. Number 13, Oklahoma at Tulsa. I don't really see this being a competition. I think Ollie Gordon is going to have a day against Tulsa's defense. I have Oklahoma State winning that game. Next, LSU at South Carolina. This game, personally, I do have LSU winning. They're number 16 in the nation. However, I do want it known they are my pick for this game. However, we are going to go over possible upset games here in just a little bit. I don't have them in that, but I do think that if LSU was to lose that game, it would not be too much of a shocker for me, especially how that offense has been playing. They're still productive. It's just when you're going up against a team like South Carolina, who over the last 2 to 3 years has been getting nothing but better. Spencer Rattler isn't there anymore, but I definitely think that there's a chance that South Carolina at home could take that game from LSU, but I do think LSU ends up winning it. Next game, just like the Oklahoma State game, not too much to really go over in it. Arkansas State goes to Michigan. While Michigan is, they don't have Harbaugh anymore, Corum's gone, McCarthy's gone, most of their offense. I do think that they still win that game. I think that if Michigan loses to Arkansas State, we will basically see the downfall of the Michigan dynasty. Oregon State, always nice to see a rivalry, just like we're going to talk about the Utah State game here in a minute. I do have Oregon winning this. This is one of those games, though, that we're going to go over for the possible upsets, but for right now, I do have Oregon taking that. We have Ball State at number 10 Miami, just like with the Oklahoma game or Oklahoma State. We're not really going to dive too much into that. No reason to really get into it too much. It's going to be a dominant performance. Don't really see Ball State winning. Miami, number 10 in the nation, solid defense. We have number 15 Oklahoma. They play at home against Tulane. I do have Tulane losing this game. I don't think that they're going to be able to do anything against Oklahoma. Granted, I don't think that Arnold is going to have an amazing day, but I do think that him and Oklahoma will squeak by, beating Tulane. I personally think that it's going to be a lot closer game than what people are thinking, but I still have Oklahoma taking that. We have 18 Notre Dame at Purdue. This is another one that we're going to go over for a possible upset. I do have Notre Dame winning this one, though, so don't really think there's going to be an upset, but they are playing at Purdue, so we'll go over that in just a little bit. Number 12, Utah at Utah State. I do have Utah winning this just because they are the better program, in my opinion. However, it's a rivalry game, so just like we saw with the Iowa State game, anything could happen. Just because Utah State isn't ranked doesn't mean that they don't have a chance. So could see an upset with that, but I don't really consider it an upset in rivalry games like that. But I do have Utah winning. Number 5, Ole Miss at Wake Forest. I do not see Ole Miss losing this game. I think if Ole Miss loses this game, there's going to be some a major drop for them and also some rearranging to do, being that they're number 5 in the nation. But like I said, I don't think that they're going to lose against Wake Forest. Wake Forest personally hasn't shown me anything that makes me think that they would be able to go out there and compete with Ole Miss on that level. Same thing with UTSA at Texas. Texas is number 2 in the nation. I expect Texas to completely dog walk UTSA. If they don't, honestly, if UTSA keeps a game within a touchdown or one score, I would say that Texas has technically kind of lost that game. They might have won on paper, but if you're going to allow UTSA to come within scoring distance after what you just did to Michigan, definitely would be questionable. Number 1, Georgia plays Kentucky. I do have Georgia winning this game. Best team in the nation, Carson Beck. I don't think that they're going to roll over against Kentucky, no matter how good Kentucky's been doing. Northern Iowa, same thing with them. They visit Nebraska. Nebraska's number 23 in the nation. I don't see Nebraska losing that game at home. I do have them taking it. Last game is Kent State at Tennessee. Tennessee's ranked number 7th in the nation. At home, I do not see them losing to Kent State. Kent State can somehow pull that out. That would be, again, just like with number 5 at Ole Miss, they would drop down major, in my opinion, in the power rankings, and we would see some reshifting just because Kent State, they're basically like the UTSA at Texas game. It's statistically, I don't see them being able to hang with Tennessee, so if they can keep it within at least a one-score game, for Kent State, they might lose, but I would consider that a win for them. Last thing we're going to touch on is possible upsets for this Saturday. We have 3 games to go over. First is going to be Notre Dame and Purdue. Notre Dame, they came off a very shocking loss. I know not a lot of people were expecting it from Northern Illinois. They did pull that out, though. At Purdue, I think that it's going to be very tough for Notre Dame. I do think that they still end up winning it, but if we were to pick a few games from this week that I think there would be a possibility of an upset, Notre Dame and Purdue is definitely number 1 on my list, just because Notre Dame is slowly kind of falling off. Not saying that they're doing terrible, but some of the opponents that they face, not great competition for how they've been playing. Purdue, they're putting together a solid season so far. Granted, we're only 2 games in. I think that they take Notre Dame. Like I said, if we were to look at an upset, I think that Purdue would be the top 1 for that, but I do still have Notre Dame winning. Second upset, I have Alabama at Wisconsin. This one's not too much of a surprise. Alabama, like I said before, Kalen DeBoer era, it's not going as hot as we thought it would. They go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's coming off of a nice win. Personally, I don't think that they're one of the better teams in the nation, but I do think that at home against Alabama, there is a possibility that they kind of take over. I don't think that it's going to be necessarily a defensive matchup. I don't think that they're going to be able to contain Jalen Milroe, but I do think that if they were to win the game, that in order for them to win, he's still going to score, he's still going to get yardage, but you got to limit what he can do on the ground. Obviously, he's going to pass, he's a quarterback, bam, but he's a dual threat. You got to limit what he can do, set up some contain, that way when he tries to leave the pocket, you have linebackers able to crash down on him, DNs who are fast enough to chase him out of the pocket and make him decide between throwing on the run, making a bad throw, throwing it out of bounds, eating a sack. So I definitely think Wisconsin's defense is up for the job, but it's going to be a fun one to watch. Like I said, I do have Alabama taking that, but a good chance that Wisconsin could get the upset. Last one, it's not too much of an upset. Like I said before, in the Utah State game, I have Oregon and Oregon State. I have Oregon State being kind of an upset in that. It's a rivalry game. I don't care if Oregon's ranked number 2 in the nation and Oregon State is 0-3. There's always a possibility in those rivalry games that the worst team comes out and dominates. Michigan State, we've seen that over the years, countless examples. So while I do think Oregon takes this, I do think that if we were to ask and look for another possibility of an upset, I think that Oregon State at home, they could pull out that win. Oregon's offense has been looking a little bit shaky right now, especially Dillon Gabriel. He's not looking terrible. His performances, though, against who they face just haven't really... I thought he would do a lot better, let's just say that, especially when he left Oklahoma. I was expecting a lot bigger things from him in Oregon and haven't really seen those, so a little bit disappointed from him, but like I said, I do have Oregon winning this game, but I think there's a good chance that Oregon State could end up getting the upset. That's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I'll catch you guys tomorrow morning around 10 to 11 a.m. Central. We're going to recap all of Saturday's games, our predictions, and we're also going to go over Sunday's predictions for the NFL games. We'll go over fantasy, stardom, situms, who we think is going to have a good week, but I'll let you guys get on to the Saturday games. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.